Hey TYT, this is Nomi Konst. So we've been covering a lot of inside baseball politics over the past 7 months. I've done a lot of work in New York. We've talked about the IDC, the Independent Democratic Conference that has split off from the Senate. Well, guess what? The dysfunction in New York politics, or politics in general, does not stop with the IDC. It does not start with the IDC. It really goes back to the machine. Now, a lot of you had been following politics over the past, year and a half, 2 years, and you saw what happened with the DNC, you saw what happened with Bernie Sanders and the machine, and that's opened your eyes to the dysfunction in the Democratic Party and in political parties itself. Well, in New York, many New Yorkers are very familiar with the machine, but I would say that probably the most corrupt and notorious machine in the country is in the Bronx. It's an area of New York City, for those of you who are not familiar with it, where they have old school committees and establishment members and clubs that really work to maintain their power and prevent any outsiders from coming in. Now, there's a sea change happening. There are a lot of Berniecrats all over the country who are going out there saying, I want to run for office, I want to bring a progressive message to the local level all the way to the national level, and I'm willing to challenge the machine. But how do you challenge the machine? You can't just do it with a snap of the fingers. You have to be really strategic. You have to be really smart about it. And our guest today is somebody who is not only challenging the machine, but he has a real shot. Randy Abreu, correct?
Randy
Yes.
Abreu.
Randy Abreu, who has been campaigning tirelessly in the Bronx against a sitting councilman who got a lot of attention the past several weeks nationally for some comments he made, which we'll get to in a second. He is challenging a sitting city councilman in the Bronx. He is taking a campaign break, having some lunch with us, which is great, with his mother in the Bronx. So thanks for joining us, Randy.
Miki, thank you so much for having me. I sometimes can't think what's more grassroots than being back in the apartment you grew up in. Mom making some eggs, bacon, hanging out, talking politics. This is it.
I wish
How
I
you
were
doing?
in LA. I would love to join you. Some of
We
your
could have done it
moms.
up here. Yeah, come up to the Bronx. We'll do a nice one.
Anytime. So Randy, you're a young guy. You were a Berniecrat. You were a Bernie delegate. But you also had some experience. You worked in the administration, the Obama administration, and
Okay.
we've talked a little bit about this offline about your moment of I need to do more, I need to be more. Can you talk about just moving from the Obama administration to becoming a Bernie delegate and how the Obama folks and insiders took that?
Yeah, it was a big inspiration because growing up, especially here in the Bronx, growing up in a diverse community, you experience a lot of things, but you don't really know how to put these experiences to words. Until you grow up, you have more opportunities, you read more books, and Bernie kind of put a lot of what I was feeling into words. And I'm working for the Obama administration. We're working on clean energy, financing, how do we move the Paris Agreement forward? And yes, that's great, and I know it's going to be great with Mom here. Ma,
I love it. I love it. I love it. Hello.
Oh man, I love Mom. I love Mom to death. She's so proud too. And I keep thinking about how the Obama administration in other fields could have moved forward and pushed the agenda a little bit. And we're always talking about healthcare. We're always talking about protecting tenants and workers. It doesn't really get done. We get a lot of talking points, but Bernie put it to action. We can actually see tangible ways to move forward, especially with the People's Platform. So making that jump as to a Bernie delegate felt natural, felt like the right move, and because there's a wave behind us, I finally feel like I'm on the team I'm supposed to be on.
And you mean a wave, meaning a generational wave in particular.
Exactly.
I think a lot of folks were thinking very short term, maybe other people would debate me, but a lot of folks were thinking short term about how can the players that are in charge benefit me right now. And, you decided to go the long game and fight for what you believe in, the values you believe in. And in New York City in particular, there are a lot of progressives in New York City and a lot of progressives who probably align with Bernie politics that still sided with Hillary because of political repercussions, right? But you are
Right.
sitting here right now in a position where you have a real shot at unseating an incumbent who is tied to the Bronx machine, who was a Republican only a few years ago, who is a millionaire. And, and as a result, because you've been able to mobilize so many people, our revolution has just endorsed you. So that's a huge thing. You have some union support. Your state senator, Gustavo Rivera, has supported you. So you've got some real insiders and big organizations at your back. I want to ask you about your opponent, because some people say, oh, well, we don't want to focus on negative politics. We don't want to hit the other person. I never really understood that, because if you're trying to show how you're different from somebody, and when you have an opponent who gets attention because he was caught on camera telling a crowd of people that rich people have much more difficult lives than poor people because they have so many more responsibilities. We're going to play that clip. But he said, quote, millionaire people, they have a lot of stuff to worry about, more stuff to manage. They really got there because of their ability to handle more pressure. That blew up. That got national attention. A lot of blogs picked up on it. That's your opponent. How is this person who is representing one of the most impoverished communities in the state, with so many working people, working immigrants who are facing real estate issues because, you've got these real estate companies buying out these buildings and raising the cost of rent. How did his district hear this? How did they react to it? Are you telling, other folks about this in your neighborhood?
Yeah, the conversation's getting around. If to think about our district, it's a dense urban community, 160,000 residents, on a community that spans about 5 train stops in New York City. And we're one of the least engaged communities in New York City. Our voter turnout is low, and I think we always have to start there. Someone's not doing the job locally. And this choice for city council this year isn't hard, in my opinion. It's a candidate who's born and raised here in the community, a candidate who wants to work for the people because he knows the people's voices haven't been heard, can actually get the job done, is not in line with the real estate business. Grandma.
I love this. This is so great.
Grandma Milagros. And who's got Grandma Milagros? And we're good people who know how to get this job done. And versus another candidate who's tied to the real estate board, who funds his campaigns, who are harassing our tenants. So who is he going to defend? An incumbent who doesn't support women's rights. A candidate who doesn't believe in equal marriage. A candidate who sold his own church for almost $1 million just to allow luxury apartment rentals that span about $2,000 for a studio. $2,000 for a studio, 12 months a year, that's $24,000 a year. $24,000 is pretty much our average salary in the district. So his vision for our community, how we move forward, our best interests aren't in mind. And it's not that hard of a choice for me. It's unfortunate to see, whether you want to call it a machine, a committee, an establishment. It's unfortunate to see here in the Bronx that we didn't take that path and be on the right side of history. But, endorsements are what they are. But we're here knocking on the doors and we're talking to one of the least engaged communities, and it's my community. It's personal, but it's actually bigger than anything. It's about 160,000 people whose voices haven't been heard.
Let's talk about the machine a bit, because it seems like this unknown, like what's behind the curtain, very Wizard of Oz-esque. Like, who is the machine? What is the machine? When people want to run for office and they've never run before, and they are living in an area where there's, very engaged machine, or even if they're in rural communities, you've got the parties that are holding on to power, clinging on to power. How do you break through? How are you able to break through and get the support of unions and get the support of your state senator, who by the way, a progressive state senator who this guy ran against last time? So just keep in mind.
And Senator Gustavo Rivera has been one of the only leaders to actually see this vision for our community, want to move it forward, and stand up to a small group of people that want to take control and not have our best interests in mind. And it wasn't easy navigating this field. It actually, as a young person running for office, if I can send any message to everyone else, hopefully, yes, do it. Yes, take that leap. And you're going to navigate a field with many minds. You're going to have to talk to a lot of people who will tell you things that or should discourage you. But keep going, because we know we're on the right side. We know it's righteous, and we know we want to help people. When it came to this specific machine going on in the Bronx, it's about maintaining political power. The best way to think about a machine is any situation you've probably been in, maybe at work, maybe at school, a small number of people at the top who kind of direct how everything else goes. They can make things happen and they can make things move, such as support, funding, votes. They can make it move like a machine. And people have words to say about the machine. It's not democratic at the end of the day. It's we think of super delegates with Hillary and Bernie last year, and it's come on, that we saw that was a group of elected officials who've been in office for some of them for decades, and of course they're friends with Secretary Clinton. That's how friendships work. But when we're talking about democracy, and we're talking about the reason a government was established to always work in the public interest, always work for the people, then machines, cliques, groups, establishments that don't work for the public, and if I have another tenant that tells me that they were harassed out of their apartment, that's one injustice too many. And we need to stop worrying about machines and personalities and egos and get to work. And that's the promise.
Do you think that Councilman Cabrera, who by the way has a home in Westchester, and I think folks said
he's a homeowner.
Not in your community though. Well, in terms of this home. This home in Westchester, for those of you who are familiar with Westchester, it's probably because the Clintons have a compound in Westchester. So it's a very wealthy community. So he has this home in Westchester, and he's been getting a lot of national attention because of his comments about being a millionaire and how difficult it is being a millionaire. I'm rather surprised that because of that, some of the other elected officials who are supporting him or who are members of the machine, who have a duty to represent their people, that they are not ashamed of being aligned with him. When you have Councilman Cabrera sent out this endorsement list, and we haven't been able to validate or fact check it yet because this is politics, so people put a lot of things on mailers that are inaccurate. But you have folks like the mayor of New York, who is unapologetically progressive. That's how he paints himself. He's the guy who said there's a tale of two cities, the poor and the rich. And for him to align himself and endorse, if this is true, somebody like Cabrera, it just seems like it would be such a risk because of the negativity that was brought by these comments. Have you noticed that some of these politicians are pulling back their support because it's just so egregious?
Pulling it back, I feel you go into this process with rose-colored glasses, and then you start to see what's actually going on. So pulling back support may not happen immediately. Sometimes people would want to wait to see if this even becomes a story, if they could kind of just hide behind a wall. But it's confusing to me if you call yourself a progressive to align yourself with someone who clearly has conservative views, conservative values in a community that doesn't need that right now, in a community that needs to move forward. So it's with the mayor especially, I would like to see if that was actually his endorsement and his reasons why he would support him, because here in the community we aren't being engaged and educated on certain projects going on Jerome Ave, rezoning projects going on. The income levels are going down in the community, and healthcare isn't being provided to everyone. So it's confusing to me. I'd like to see what actually happens moving forward.
In terms of this machine, let's talk about some of the money that's flowing, because it's not just that they want to control power. There are people who are trying to make sure that they stay in control. And in New York, like a lot of cities around the country, they face a lot of the same threats. The oligarchs coming in and buying up real estate, and the real estate industry and charter schools and all these different interests. Who's funding the machine? Who's oiling the machine in the Bronx?
It's real estate. It's real estate investments, and it's that one special interest that has controlled New York City for the longest time and has shifted the culture and makeup of New York City towards where it's open. Everyone's talking about it. It's a glass ceiling, it's cookie cutter, glass buildings, it's corporate. Real estate has a lot of influence over the decisions of elected officials. My councilman now, Fernando Cabrera, doesn't support bills that support tenants. He's similar to the bills where we recently got a right to counsel for tenants. We gave tenants a right of action in housing court against landlords who are harassing us. His name isn't on there to support the bill. And you just follow the money, right? That you follow the money, you see that real estate and landlord lobbyists fund Fernando Cabrera.
What does that mean?
That's how it works.
What kind of things happen? Like for people who aren't living in the city, what are the obstacles that a renter in the city faces when the real estate industry is so powerful?
There's those that happen in front of everyone and those that happen behind the scenes. In front of everyone, it's rent prices going up while incomes stay stagnant and they actually go down. In our district, since 2010, the height of the Great Recession, we were making $33,000 a year in 2010. We make about $30,000 a year now.
Wow.
So that's a discrepancy in 99 and the 1. It's here. It's happening here. And what's happening behind the scenes with landlords that no one wants to talk about, that needs to come out, and we will tell these stories when I'm in the city council, is the harassment that goes on. The bribery, telling a mother with 2 children, if you leave your rent-stabilized apartment, I'll give you $5,000. And a low-income mother might take this deal if she's back behind with 1 month's rent. She can't make it too long in New York City with just $5,000. And the landlord, at the end of the day, gets a market value apartment instead of rent stabilized. And the heat isn't on. The hot water isn't working. There's mold in the apartment. Repairs don't get done. If there's an immigrant in the apartment, there are landlords that intimidate them and threaten them with potential deportation. This is the harassment that goes on in the city and goes on blindly. We do complain, we organize, but our political agency is low. Remember, we're one of the least engaged communities. We make less than $30,000 a year. Only 38% of us never graduated from high school. And that's not a failure by us, as the councilman might suggest, that we can't increase our capacity, and that's why we're poor and we don't have hard lives.
Do you know it's harder being rich than being poor? I know you don't believe what I just said. But being rich, you got more responsibility. You have more things. When you work 9 to 5 and you just maintaining, okay, I got my thing. When you are rich, you have more things to worry. Millionaire people, they have a lot of stuff to worry about, more stuff to manage, more stuff. It's really got there because of their ability to handle more pressure. Every CEO, every president, they got in there and stay there is because of their ability to handle pressure. They had increased their capacity. You know why your boss pays you what he pays you? Because of your capacity.
And it's a failure of the system to not allow us the opportunity to grow, to continue to push us down. And all we're saying is we need our voices heard. We need our interests to be a priority at the table, not the real estate and the landlord industry. That's all we want: equity, equality, and a seat at the table. And when you fund a politician with millions of dollars, you get that seat at the table, even though the people that put him in office are the voters.
This is a touchy subject right now nationally within the Democratic Party, but I think the Bronx in particular is indicative of it shows the problems internally in the Democratic Party. You just mentioned that the average salary is down from 2010 at the height of the Great Recession, and I think what that indicates is that while the economy has gotten better, income inequality has gotten so much worse. The Wall Street economy, something that President Obama would rave about, yes, it got better. But, wages are down. We saw what happened with Brexit. We saw what happened with Trump. And we saw how the Republicans seized the opportunity to pretend they were populists. At the same time, there's this debate over identity politics or economics. Now, you live in a district where it's predominantly, Latino, and the wages are stagnated and actually worse. You're running against somebody who is Latino, who was a pastor of a very popular church, right? And
Still is,
exactly. He sold the land for to real estate owners. You're Latino. You come from an immigrant family. Do you find that he is ignoring having conversations about economics just because it makes him look bad? Like, you don't have to play the identity card because you're all the same community.
Right.
what is he talking about? What is he campaigning on? If you can't campaign on those things.
Yeah, it's he'll campaign on saying, "Look, I brought millions of dollars to improve the park in our community," and "Hey, I brought millions of dollars to build a new staircase right here in the community." Or remember Backpack Day? I hope you enjoyed Backpack Day.
What's that?
And yes, and when I grew up here. I remember growing up wanting a backpack, like a really cool backpack from school, because we couldn't afford it, and it was nice when you could get it. That's something that continues. That's something that should never stop. But the money that he gets isn't his money. It's city money that is then given to him to allocate as the city suggests. And he gets about $1.5 million a year discretionary funding.
Right.
That's the investment that isn't happening in our community. That's the money that isn't going anywhere. So when he says we've given away money for these reasons, that it's not sufficient, it's not sustainable, and there's no vision for our community. So
they're like mini bribes. They're mini, well, not even bribes. They're just,
I hate to say, but sometimes you think it's probably like Stockholm syndrome in politics. It's our rights and our interests are never a priority at the table when laws are being made.
Right.
And we're fed an after-school program and a backpack. In Harlem, back in the day, there's always a great story of a politician going on saying, "Hey, remember when I gave you turkey?" And a lot of the crowd is, "Yes, I do," and we clap, and it's great that's inspiring that he was able to give us turkey. But why not give us the tools and the resources so that we can always be able to go out there and get our own turkey? Funny turkey story.
It's as we say, we're fighting over scraps while the big guys are out there sucking up all the resources.
That's that's something that's real. It's very real happening in the country. I'm sure it happens around the world. And the microcosm is right here in the Bronx. I'm in here, the belly of the beast. I'm staring at it. It hurts how disengaged we are. So going out and door knocking is the way to do it. It's one of the best feelings I get when I do knock on someone's door and we talk about the community, we talk about a better vision. But it's that type of grassroots people power movement that I'm confident is the only way to get this done.
It's the only way to fight the machine. You can't fight the machine unless you have the people. So when is your primary?
September 12th. Tuesday, September 12th.
And you're, I assume that there's lots of people who want to come out and help you and volunteer if they're in the area. And
come on down. We are in the Bronx and Kingsbridge Road, Jerome Avenue, 4 train to Kingsbridge. That's 10 West Kingsbridge Road. But reach out to us on the website, abreufornyc.com. That's Abreu, FORNYC. And same Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Abreu for NYC. We're pretty social media accessible.
And maybe your mom will make some eggs for him.
Mom makes some of the best food. Empanadas, pastelitos. It's everyone's invited. Come on.
Randy Abreu, recently endorsed by Our Revolution. He is the first city council candidate to be endorsed, New York City candidate to be endorsed by Our Revolution. He's running against the Bronx machine. I would say the most corrupt machine in politics in the country. I always say in New York, all roads lead to the Bronx or to Buffalo. So, if you carry out this win, it's a big deal because then you've got 2 people in the Bronx, including Senator Rivera, who are able to challenge the machine and win. And that is a huge weakness when the establishment is cracking that much. So great to speak with you, Randy Abreu. September 13th?
12th.
Excuse me. Oh, no. September 12th. We'll put that on the screen. September 12th.
Big flashing lights.
I just did your opponent a favor.
He'd love that. Oh, man.
Right.
No, you're good. Thank you so much, Miki.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Take care.